6 royal guards surrounded the most feared vampire in history. Silver blades pointed at Lucien Voss from every direction. The vampire king was wounded, outnumbered, seconds from death. Then a frightened orphan girl stepped into the circle. Nobody knew her name. Nobody knew why the ancient throne room suddenly began to shake. And nobody knew that a single drop of her blood was about to expose 6 centuries of lies. Alara Ashwin was poor. There was no softer word for it. By 17, hunger had become as familiar to her as breathing. She wore the same patched dress through every season, sleeping wherever she could find shelter, abandoned barns, empty sheds, and occasionally beneath broken market stalls after the merchants had gone home. The cold winters of Ebonreach carved sharp lines into her young face. Her boots were falling apart. Her hands were rough from work. Most days she survived on scraps that wealthier villagers threw away. To the people of Briar Hollow, Alara was nobody, just another orphan drifting through the edges of society, a forgettable girl with tangled brown hair, tired eyes, and little hope for a future. The village merchants barely noticed her. The nobles certainly never did. Even the children often ignored her. People looked past Alara the same way they looked past cracked fences or abandoned buildings. She simply blended into the background. And for most of her life, Alara had accepted that. The only thing she owned of any value was a silver pendant hanging from a worn leather cord around her neck. It belonged to her mother. She did not know where it came from. She did not know why her mother had guarded it so carefully. And she certainly did not know that kings had once ordered entire bloodlines hunted because of the symbol engraved upon its surface. To Alara, it was simply the last piece of family she had left, the last proof that someone had once loved her. Far beyond Briar Hollow, deep within the frozen Shadowfang Mountains, another name haunted the thoughts of every man, woman, and child in the kingdom. Lucien Voss, the Vampire King. Parents frightened their children with stories about him. Travelers whispered his name around campfires. Soldiers spoke of him with equal parts hatred and fear. According to legend, he had slaughtered armies, drained kings of their blood, and ruled Blackthorn Keep through terror for nearly 600 years. Whether the stories were true hardly mattered anymore. After centuries of repetition, the monster had become larger than the man. Meanwhile, inside the royal capital, King Aldrich had finally decided the time had come to end the legend forever. 6 of the deadliest royal guards in Ebonreach were secretly preparing for a mission from which none of them might return. Their targets sat upon the throne of Blackthorn Keep. Their orders were simple. Kill Lucien Voss. Burn the castle. Leave no survivors. Neither the king nor his guards knew that destiny had already begun moving, because on the very night their mission would begin, a violent storm would force a forgotten orphan girl toward the gates of the most feared fortress in the kingdom. And before dawn arrived, everything the world believed about monsters, heroes, and prophecy would be turned upside down. The storm arrived just after sunset. Snow swept across the Shadowfang Mountains in thick white waves, swallowing roads, villages, and entire forests beneath its fury. Desperate to escape the freezing wind, Alara started climbing toward the distant silhouette of Blackthorn Keep. At the exact same moment, 6 royal guards entered a hidden mountain passage beneath the castle. One sought shelter. The others came seeking blood. Neither side realized they were already walking toward the same destiny. The storm swallowed the mountains. Snow whipped across the jagged cliffs as Alara struggled up the final stretch of the winding path. Her fingers were numb. Her torn boots had long since soaked through. Every breath felt like knives in her chest. Ahead, Blackthorn Keep rose from the mountainside like something carved from darkness itself. Lightning flashed. For an instant, the fortress stood fully revealed. Towering black walls, crimson stained glass windows, ancient spires piercing the sky. Then darkness returned. Alara hesitated. Every story she had ever heard warned her to turn back. Children throughout Ebonreach grew up hearing tales about this place. They spoke of torture chambers hidden beneath the castle, of prisoners chained to stone walls, of monsters feeding on human blood beneath moonlit halls. Some claimed screams echoed from the towers every night. Others swore the Vampire King decorated his throne room with the skulls of his enemies. Alara had believed every word, but the storm left her little choice. Either she entered the castle, or she froze to death outside it. Gathering her courage, she pushed open the massive iron gate. It moved surprisingly easily. A deep groan echoed through the courtyard. She stepped inside and immediately realized something was wrong. Not dangerous wrong, unexpectedly wrong. The courtyard wasn't filled with bones or corpses. Instead, marble statues lined elegant pathways. Ancient fountains stood frozen beneath layers of ice. The architecture was breathtaking, beautiful, almost royal. Alara frowned. This wasn't what she had expected at all. She continued deeper into the fortress. The enormous entrance hall stretched before her. Golden chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. Paintings covered the walls. Rows of books filled towering shelves that reached nearly to the ceiling. Books. Thousands of them. Alara stopped in disbelief. Monsters didn't collect libraries. At least, she didn't think they did. Silence filled the castle. No screams, no prisoners. No horrors waiting in the shadows. Only the quiet crackle of distant fireplaces. The entire place felt strangely alive, as if generations of people had lived and worked here. A sudden sound made her freeze. Footsteps. Several figures emerged from a nearby corridor. Alara's heart nearly stopped. She expected fangs, claws, monsters. Instead, she found servants. An elderly woman carrying folded linens, a young man balancing a tray of food, a middle-aged groundskeeper holding a lantern. They stared at her in surprise. Alara immediately stepped backward. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "I didn't mean to trespass. I only needed shelter from the storm." The servants exchanged confused glances. The older woman noticed the girl's trembling hands. Then her expression softened. "Child," she said gently, "you're freezing." Alara blinked. That wasn't the response she expected. Within minutes, she found herself seated beside a warm fireplace. A bowl of stew rested in her hands. Fresh bread sat beside it. One servant cleaned the cuts on her palms. Another brought blankets. The warmth almost made her cry. Nobody threatened her. Nobody treated her as prey. Nobody even seemed particularly alarmed by her presence. The entire situation felt impossible. Far above them, hidden within the upper reaches of Blackthorn Keep, another figure watched the storm through a towering crimson window. His white hair fell across dark velvet clothing. A crimson cloak draped across his shoulders. Even standing motionless, he radiated authority, power, control. The room remained silent as he stared into the blizzard beyond the glass. Several attendants waited nearby. None dared interrupt him, not because they feared punishment, because they respected him. The man finally turned away from the window. The movement alone caused everyone in the chamber to straighten. A messenger hurried forward and bowed. "My king." The title echoed softly through the room. Lucien Voss, the Vampire King, the ruler feared throughout the kingdom. The messenger spoke quietly. "There has been a breach in the outer defenses." Lucian's expression remained unreadable. "How many?" "Unknown." The messenger swallowed nervously. "But the sentries have stopped reporting." Lucian's crimson eyes narrowed slightly. The storm had hidden more than one visitor tonight. Meanwhile, deep beneath the castle, 6 shadows moved through ancient tunnels. Garrick Thorne led the way. Behind him came Cedric, Rowan, Tristan, Alaric, and Dorian. Their black armor absorbed the darkness, Silver weapons gleamed faintly in torchlight. A vampire sentry rounded a corner. He never had time to scream. Garrick's blade struck first. The body collapsed. The guards continued forward. Another sentry died. Then another. Blood stained the stone passages. The deeper they ventured, the more bodies they left behind. Their mission had begun. Kill Lucien Voss. Leave no survivors. No hesitation. No mercy. Back near the Great Hall, Alara finished the last of her meal. The warmth had finally returned to her hands. For the first time in months, she felt safe. A servant was leading her toward a guest chamber when movement caught her eye. Someone stood at the far end of a distant corridor, tall, motionless, watching, only partially illuminated by candlelight. Alara couldn't see his face clearly. She noticed only flashes of white hair, a crimson cloak, an unmistakable presence that seemed to dominate the entire hallway. The servants immediately lowered their heads. The atmosphere changed. Not fear, respect. The mysterious figure took a step forward. His gaze drifted toward Alara, then stopped, completely. The world seemed to freeze. His eyes locked onto the silver pendant hanging around her neck. The pendant her mother had left her. For a brief moment, genuine shock crossed his face. The servants noticed it instantly. They exchanged uneasy glances. No one could remember the last time Lucien Voss had looked surprised. The vampire king slowly approached. His eyes never left the pendant. Not once. Alara felt her heartbeat quicken. The silence stretched, long, uncomfortable, almost unreal. Then Lucien stopped several feet away. His pale face had gone still. His crimson eyes widened slightly, as though he were staring at a ghost, a memory, or something that should not exist. The entire corridor seemed to hold its breath. Finally, barely above a whisper, the vampire king spoke. Impossible. And for the first time that night, Alara truly felt that something inside Blackthorn Keep had awakened. Impossible. Dr. Gaspard lingered in the corridor long after Lucien spoke it. Alara instinctively reached for the silver pendant hanging around her neck. The vampire king's crimson eyes followed the movement. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Lucien seemed to regain control of himself. His expression hardened. The shock vanished so quickly that Alara wondered if she had imagined it. "Who gave you that pendant?" he asked quietly. "My mother." The answer came automatically. Lucien's gaze sharpened. "Your mother? What was her name?" Alara hesitated. "Lydia Ashwin." Something flickered in his eyes. Not fear, not anger, recognition. Yet he said nothing more. Instead, he turned toward one of the nearby servants. "Ensure she is comfortable." "My lord?" the servant asked. "She is under my protection." The statement stunned everyone in the corridor, including Alara. Without another word, Lucien turned and disappeared into the shadows of the castle, leaving behind far more questions than answers. The next morning, Alara wandered through Blackthorn Keep. Sleep has been difficult. Her thoughts kept returning to Lucien's reaction. Why had the pendant affected him so strongly? What did he know? And why had the most feared ruler in Ebonreach placed her under his personal protection? She expected answers. Instead, she found more confusion. Children ran through one of the castle courtyards, laughing, playing. A small girl chased a wooden hoop across the snow-covered stones. Nearby, two women sat together mending clothes while discussing household supplies. Further down a corridor, scholars worked inside a vast library filled with ancient books. Some were human. Some were vampires. None appeared dangerous. None resembled the monsters from the stories. The deeper Alara explored, the stranger everything became. Families shared meals. Workers repaired damaged walls. Teachers instructed young students. The castle felt less like a fortress of evil and more like a small city hidden within the mountains. She couldn't understand it. Has the entire kingdom been wrong? Or was she missing something? Late that afternoon, a servant escorted her to a private chamber overlooking the western cliffs. Lucien was waiting. He stood beside a tall window, staring out at the storm clouds gathering over the mountains. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Lucien gestured toward a chair. "Sit." Ilara obeyed. His presence remained intimidating, not because he threatened her, because he seemed impossibly old, like someone who carried centuries upon his shoulders. Lucien studied her carefully. "Tell me about your family. I don't know much." "Tell me anyway." Ilara lowered her eyes. "My father died before I was born. My mother never spoke about him." Lucien remained silent. "My mother died when I was 10. The words still hurt. After that, I survived however I could." "And the pendant?" "She told me never to lose it." Lucien nodded slowly. "As I suspected." Ilara leaned forward. "You know something." A long silence followed. Finally, Lucien spoke. "Your mother was protecting you." "From what?" "That is a difficult question." His gaze drifted toward the mountains. For the first time, sadness appeared in his eyes. 6 centuries ago, humans and vampires lived under a sacred treaty. Ilara frowned. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Lucien's voice remained calm. "The stories taught in Ebonreach claim vampires began the Great Blood War. Didn't they?" A bitter smile appeared. "No." The single word carried enormous weight, and suddenly Ilara sensed she was standing near the edge of a truth few people knew. Far below Blackthorn Keep, steel clashed against steel. The 6 royal guards continued their advance. Bodies littered the stone corridors. Elite vampire warriors fought fiercely to defend the fortress, but Garrick Thorne and his men were among the deadliest soldiers in the kingdom. One by one, defenders fell. The guards pushed deeper, closer to Lucien, closer to the throne room, closer to answers. Back inside the tower chamber, Lucien stared into the distance. His voice became quieter, almost reflective. "I remembered the treaty." The room seemed to fade around him. His eyes no longer saw the present, they saw the past. "I remember human cities beside vampire cities." Images formed in Ilara's mind as he spoke. Ancient kingdoms, shared marketplaces, children playing together. Peace. Then came betrayal. Lucien's expression darkened. Certain human rulers wanted more power. His voice hardened. They broke the treaty. Fire, war, blood, entire settlements burned, families slaughtered. The fragile peace shattered forever. "Both sides suffered," Lucien continued, "but history belongs to whoever survives long enough to write it." Ilara listened carefully. Every story she had ever heard painted Lucien as the villain. Yet nothing about the man before her matched those tales. He seemed weary, burdened, like someone carrying old wounds that never healed. "You expect me to believe everyone lied?" she asked. "No." Lucien turned toward her. "I expect you to question what you've been told." The answer lingered in her thoughts. Meanwhile, Cedric Vale and Rowan Blackmore had become separated from the others during the assault. While searching for alternate routes, they discovered a hidden archive sealed behind an iron door. Dust covered everything. Ancient records filled countless shelves. Rowan opened one of the ledgers, then another, and another. Minutes passed. Neither man spoke. Finally, Cedric broke the silence. "This can't be right." Rowan stared at a collection of royal documents. His face had gone pale. According to the records, the Great Blood War had not begun with vampire aggression. The first attack had been ordered by King Aldrich's ancestors. Human nobles had violated the treaty. Human armies had launched the first assault. Human rulers had hidden the truth. Cedric slowly lowered the document. We were told Lucien started everything. So was I. Neither man moved. The archives suddenly felt colder. Everything they believed rested upon a foundation of lies. Night settled over Blackthorn Keep. The storm continued to howl beyond the walls. Inside the hidden archive, Cedric and Rowan exchanged uneasy looks. Elsewhere, Garrick and the remaining guards pressed deeper into the fortress, and high above them all, Ilara stood beside a window overlooking the mountains. Questions filled her mind, questions with no easy answers. For 600 years, the kingdom had called Lucien Voss a monster. For 600 years, people had accepted that story without question. Now cracks were beginning to appear. Small at first, but growing wider with every discovery. And somewhere deep within Blackthorn Keep, the truth was waiting. The most dangerous realization of all was beginning to spread among the royal guards. What if the enemy they had come to kill was never the villain in the first place? What if the enemy they had come to kill was never the villain in the first place? The question haunted Cedric Vale as he stared at the ancient documents scattered across the archive table. Outside the chamber, the castle trembled. A distant explosion echoed through the stone corridors. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The battle was growing closer. Rowan slowly closed one of the records. We need to show Garrick. Cedric nodded, but neither man moved because both understood the problem. If the documents were genuine, everything they had sworn to defend rested upon a lie centuries old. Another explosion shook the fortress. This one much closer. The siege had entered a new phase. Blackthorn Keep was falling. The night erupted into chaos. Flames climbed portions of the outer walls. Smoke drifted through ancient corridors. Steel clashed against steel. The screams of dying warriors echoed throughout the fortress. Elite vampire commanders rallied defenders wherever they could. Yet the royal guards continued advancing. One commander fell defending the eastern gate. Another died protecting the grand library. A third made his final stand near the inner courtyard. One by one, Blackthorn Keep's protectors were cut down. The 6 royal guards moved steadily toward the heart of the castle. Toward Lucien. Toward destiny. High within the fortress, Ilara stood beside a tall window overlooking the burning courtyards below. The sight made her stomach tighten. She could see fighting in the distance. Flashes of steel. Running figures. Columns of smoke rising into the storm-dark sky. The war stories she had heard all her life suddenly felt real. A knock interrupted her thoughts. She turned. Lucien entered the chamber. His expression was calm, but something about his eyes had changed. They carried an unusual urgency. The guards are getting closer, Ilara said quietly. They are. You could leave. A faint smile touched his lips. No. The answer came without hesitation. Why not? Lucien approached the window. For a long moment, he simply watched the burning sections of his castle. Finally, he spoke. Because there are some things worth protecting. The words lingered between them. Ilara touched the pendant around her neck. Immediately, Lucien noticed. His gaze settled upon the silver symbol. The pendant belonged to the Moonborn. The statement caught her off guard. The Moonborn? Lucien nodded. An ancient bloodline. His voice grew distant, older than kingdoms, older than the war itself. Ilara's heart quickened. What were they? A long silence followed. Lucien seemed to choose his words carefully. They were important. That's not an answer. No. His crimson eyes met hers. It isn't. Frustration flashed across her face. You know more. I do. Then tell me. For the first time, Lucien looked genuinely conflicted. I cannot or will not. The vampire king turned away. Both. His answer only deepened the mystery. The Moonborn were believed extinct centuries ago, he continued. Every known descendant disappeared. His gaze returned to the pendant, and yet somehow that symbol survived. Before Alara could ask another question, another explosion shook the castle. This time the floor itself trembled. Somewhere below, alarms began ringing. The inner defenses had been breached. The fighting reached the central fortress. Garrick Thorne cut through another defender. Blood splattered across the stone floor. Behind him, Tristan and Dorian fought side by side while Alaric secured a nearby corridor. The resistance was weakening, but victory no longer felt as clear as it once had. Cedric and Rowan remained unusually quiet. The discoveries within the archive weighed heavily on both men. Finally, Garrick noticed. "What is it?" Neither answered immediately. Rowan exchanged a glance with Cedric. "Something doesn't add up." Garrick frowned. "What are you talking about? We found records." Cedric's voice was low, records that suggest Lucian didn't start the war. The leader's expression hardened. Enemy propaganda. Maybe. Cedric wasn't convinced. But what if it isn't? The conversation ended when another group of vampire defenders attacked. Steel flashed. The battle continued. But doubt had entered the mission, and doubt was often more dangerous than any enemy. Unable to sleep, Alara wandered through the castle later that night. The corridors felt strangely empty. Most servants had moved deeper into the fortress. The distant sounds of battle echoed through the walls. She followed a narrow hallway she had never noticed before. Then, another. And another. Soon she realized she was lost. The passage ended at a forgotten stone door hidden behind a faded tapestry. Curiosity overcame caution. She pushed. The door creaked open, cold air rushed out. Beyond it lay a staircase descending into darkness. Alara hesitated, then continued downward. The stairs twisted deep beneath Blackthorn Keep, far below the castle, far below the war. At last she reached the bottom. Her lantern illuminated an enormous underground chamber. She stopped in disbelief. Ancient murals covered every wall. Gold and silver pigments still glimmered despite centuries of age. Figures filled the artwork. Humans, vampires, standing together, not fighting, not killing, united. Alara slowly approached. The murals continued around the chamber. She saw cities built by both races, shared councils, ancient ceremonies. Then she noticed a third group, people unlike either humans or vampires. Silver eyes, moon-shaped symbols, glowing blood flowing through their veins. Ancient writings covered the stone beneath the murals. Alara carefully brushed dust aside. Most of the language was unfamiliar, yet portions seemed strangely readable, as though the chamber wanted her to understand. One section drew her attention immediately. The Moonborn were created to unite the divided bloods. Neither fully mortal, nor fully immortal. Children of balance, guardians between worlds. Alara's pulse quickened. The words matched what little Lucian had revealed. She continued reading. The Moonborn carried a unique bloodline, one capable of bridging humans and vampires, one capable of restoring what war had broken. A prophecy. The chamber contained a prophecy. The realization sent chills through her. She raised the lantern higher. More writing emerged from the darkness. Ancient names. Ancient warnings. Ancient mornings. Then her eyes found something that made her freeze completely. A single name carved among the final lines. Fresh fear surged through her chest. She stepped closer, certain she was mistaken, certain it couldn't be real. But the name remained there, waiting, unchanged despite centuries. Alara Ashwin, written in stone long before she had ever been born. The lantern nearly slipped from her trembling fingers. Behind her, somewhere far above, the battle for Blackthorn Keep raged on. But deep beneath the castle, another war had just begun. Because, for the first time, Alara realized the prophecy wasn't speaking about the past. It was speaking about her. The prophecy wasn't speaking about the past. It was speaking about her. Alara stared at the ancient stone wall. Her name remained carved into the rock. Unmoving. Impossible. For several moments, she could only stand there, frozen beneath the flickering lantern light. Then a distant tremor shook the underground chamber. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The battle above continued. Reality came crashing back. Alara turned and ran, up the winding staircase, through the hidden corridors, past silent hallways and darkened chambers. She needed answers, and there was only one person who could give them. Lucien Voss. She found him inside a circular chamber overlooking the inner fortress. The glow of burning towers reflected through crimson windows. Below, fighting raged throughout the castle grounds, yet Lucien remained perfectly still, as though he had expected her arrival. "You knew?" Alara said. Her voice echoed through the room. The vampire king slowly turned. His eyes immediately found the dust covering her clothes. Then they settled upon her face. "You found the chamber." "It wasn't a question. The prophecy mentions my name." Silence followed. A long silence. Finally, Lucien closed his eyes. The weight of centuries seemed to settle upon his shoulders. "Then it is time." Alara stepped forward. "No more secrets." "No." His voice was quiet. "No more secrets." For several moments, neither spoke. Then Lucien walked toward the great window overlooking Blackthorn Keep, the castle he had ruled for 600 years. "The castle is now burning around him. When I was young," he began, "the Moonborn still existed." Alara's breath caught. The Moonborn were never merely a bloodline. His crimson eyes reflected the firelight below. They were the bridge between worlds. He turned toward her. Neither fully human, nor fully a vampire. The words matched what she had read beneath the castle. Their blood carried a gift unlike any other. A strange sadness entered his expression. "They could heal corruption." Alara frowned. "What does that mean?" Lucien hesitated, then slowly exposed one of his hands. Dark veins spread beneath the pale skin, ancient, unnatural. "The curse of vampirism changes us." His voice lowered. "It twists hunger into obsession. It feeds on darkness. It slowly corrupts the soul." Alara stared. For the first time, she saw genuine vulnerability in the feared vampire king. The Moonborn could purify that corruption. The revelation hit her like a blow. They could end the curse? Not completely. Lucien shook his head. But they could weaken it. They could heal what centuries of darkness had damaged. His gaze drifted toward the pendant. Their blood could calm blood hunger, restore balance, give hope. Everything suddenly began falling into place. The prophecy, the pendant, the hidden chamber, the shock on Lucien's face when he first saw her. "You were searching for them." Lucien nodded. For centuries, the answer stunned her. "Why?" A faint smile appeared. Not a king's smile. A tired man's smile. A tired man's smile. Because they were disappearing. His expression darkened. Then they vanished entirely. What happened to them? The answer came immediately. They were hunted. The room fell silent. Alara felt cold. Hunted by who? Lucien's eyes hardened. The royal courts. A chill ran through her. The Moonborn threatened powerful people. They represented peace. They could unite humans and vampires. And there are always those who profit from division. The truth settled heavily between them. Then Lucien looked directly at her. "For centuries I searched for the final descendant." Alara slowly realized what he meant. The last moonborn. Yes. His voice softened. You. The word seemed unreal, impossible. Yet deep down she already knew. You weren't preparing for war. No. You weren't trying to conquer kingdoms. No. A deep sadness entered his eyes. I was trying to find you before they did. The realization shattered everything she believed. The feared vampire king, the monster from every story, had spent centuries searching for her, not to control her, not to use her, to protect her. Elsewhere inside Blackthorn Keep, Cedric and Rowan shared their discoveries with the remaining guards. The reaction was explosive. That's impossible. Garrick Thorne slammed his fist against a stone table. Those records were planted. They weren't, Rowan argued. We checked multiple archives. Dorian frowned. You actually believe Lucian is innocent? 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 Cedric shook his head. No, that's not what we're saying. The room grew tense. What we're saying is that we've been lied to. No one wanted to hear it. Yet no one could completely dismiss the evidence either. Alaric paced restlessly. If the king knew the truth. He knew, Rowan interrupted. The silence that followed was devastating. King Aldrich knew. His ancestors had started the war. The mission itself had been built upon deception. The revelation fractured the group. Some remained loyal to their orders. Others began questioning everything. Old certainty gave way to doubt, and doubt became division. For the first time since entering Blackthorn Keep, the 6 royal guards were no longer united. Back inside the tower chamber, Alara struggled to process everything she had learned. My mother knew. It wasn't a question. Lucian nodded. She knew exactly what you were. The answer hurt more than she expected. Then why didn't she tell me? Because knowledge would have endangered you. His expression softened. Your mother spent her entire life protecting you. A painful knot formed in Alara's chest. She died because of me. No. Lucian's voice was firm. She died protecting hope. The words lingered. For the first time since arriving at Blackthorn Keep, tears filled Alara's eyes. Not from fear, from understanding. Her mother had hidden her, protected her, sacrificed everything for her, and now she finally understood why. Another violent explosion shook the fortress, this one stronger than all the others. The windows rattled. The floor trembled. Somewhere below, alarm bells erupted throughout the castle. Lucian's expression instantly changed. The ruler disappeared. The warrior returned. They're here. Alara felt her stomach tighten. The guards, they had finally reached the heart of Blackthorn Keep. A messenger burst into the chamber moments later. Blood stained his armor. My king! Lucian turned. The messenger struggled for breath. The inner fortress has fallen. The room went silent. The throne room doors. The messenger gasped. The messenger gasped. Have been breached. Outside, steel clashed. War cries echoed through the castle. The final battle had begun. And somewhere deep within Blackthorn Keep, destiny was already moving toward the Crimson Throne Hall. Toward Lucian. Toward Alara. Toward the prophecy that had waited centuries for this night. The final battle had begun. The ancient halls of Blackthorn Keep shook beneath the violence. Steel rang against stone. War cries echoed through burning corridors. The smell of smoke filled the air. Lucian strode through the fortress with Alara beside him, moving toward the Crimson Throne Hall. Servants hurried to safety. Wounded defenders limped past. Everywhere they looked, signs of destruction surrounded them. The castle that had stood for centuries was dying. Another explosion rocked the fortress. Part of a stained glass ceiling collapsed somewhere nearby. Colored shards scattered across marble floors. Lucian never slowed. His crimson cloak swept behind him like a trail of blood. Alara struggled to keep pace. Lucian, he stopped briefly. The sound of battle thundered beyond the throne room doors. They're waiting for me. His voice was calm, too calm. You don't have to face them alone. A faint smile touched his face. I have faced worse. Then he pushed open the massive doors. The Crimson Throne Hall awaited. And chaos greeted them. The throne room looked like the end of a kingdom. Firelight flickered across towering stone columns. Broken stained glass windows allowed snow and moonlight to spill inside. Bodies littered the floor. Vampire warriors, royal soldiers. The fall of both sides. At the far end stood the 6 royal guards. Garrick Thorne, Cedric Vale, Rowan Blackmore, Tristan Holt, Alaric Vane, Dorian Crow. Their armor was stained with blood. Their weapons glimmered in the firelight. For a moment, nobody moved. Snow drifted through the shattered windows. The throne loomed behind Lucian, ancient, silent, watching. Then Garrick raised his sword. Lucian Voss. The challenge echoed throughout the hall. Lucian stepped forward. I am here. Steel left its sheath. The battle exploded. Garrick attacked first. His silver blade slashed toward Lucian's throat. Lucian moved with supernatural speed. The strike missed. A heartbeat later, Garrick crashed into a pillar. The stone shattered. Before he could recover, Tristan and Alaric joined the assault. 3 warriors attacked simultaneously. Lucian met them head-on. The throne room became a storm of steel. Sparks erupted. Weapons collided. The Vampire King moved like a shadow. Every motion is precise. Every strike is deadly. He disarmed Tristan, threw Alaric across the hall, forced Garrick backward. For several moments it seemed the legends were true. This was the warrior who had survived 6 centuries. This was the ruler kings feared. Then Dorian entered the fight. Holy fire burst from his enchanted blade. The flames struck Lucian's shoulder. For the first time, the Vampire King stumbled. The fire burned unnaturally bright. The smell of scorched flesh filled the air. The guards pressed their advantage. Cedric and Rowan hesitated briefly. Doubt remained in their eyes. But the battle had already begun. There was no turning back. All 6 warriors attacked. Together, the throne room erupted into chaos. Ilara watched helplessly. The battle was too fast, too violent, too overwhelming. Lucian fought like a force of nature. Yet even he couldn't withstand 6 elite guards forever. Silver weapons cut his flesh. Holy enchantments weakened him. A blade sliced across his ribs. Another pierced his side. Blood splattered across the ancient floor. The sight shocked Ilara. For centuries Lucian had seemed untouchable. Now he looked mortal, wounded, vulnerable. Still he refused to retreat. Still he fought, not for power, not for conquest, for protection, for hope, for her. The battle reached its breaking point. Garrick drove forward. His silver sword pierced Lucian's shoulder. The Vampire King staggered. Tristan struck next. Another wound opened across Lucian's chest. Holy fire burned through the fabric of his cloak. Lucian dropped to one knee. The throne room fell silent. Everyone felt it. The moment had arrived. The Vampire King was losing. Blood dripped onto the stone floor. Snow swirled through shattered windows. The 6 guards slowly advanced, forming a circle, closing in. Exactly as King Aldrich had ordered. Exactly as King Aldrich had ordered. Exactly as generations had dreamed. 6 royal guards. 1 Vampire King. Cornered at last. Lucian rose unsteadily. Silver wounds covered his body. Holy fire smoldered across his skin. Behind him stood the Crimson Throne. Before him stood death. Garrick lifted his sword. This ends tonight. Lucian said nothing. For the first time in centuries, defeat seemed possible. perhaps inevitable. The 6 guards prepared the final strike. Then, someone moved. Ilara stepped forward. The action stunned everyone, including herself. One moment she stood near the throne. The next, she was walking directly toward the circle of blades, toward certain death, toward 6 armed warriors. Ilara! Lucien's voice echoed through the hall. She ignored it. Her heart pounded, her legs trembled, yet she kept moving. Why? She didn't fully understand. Perhaps because Lucien had protected her. Perhaps because the stories had been lies. Perhaps because she could no longer watch people kill each other for a war built upon deception. Whatever the reason, she stepped directly between the guards and the vampire king. The entire throne room froze. Garrick stared at her. "What are you doing?" Ilara swallowed hard. "I don't know." It was the truth. She truly didn't know. The silence became unbearable. No one moved. No one attacked. Then everything went wrong. A sudden movement. A startled reaction. A blade swung unexpectedly. Not meant to kill. Not meant to her. But it struck anyway. The edge sliced across Ilara's arm. Pain exploded through her body. She gasped. A crimson line appeared across her skin. Then a single drop of blood fell. Down, 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 until it struck the ancient stone beneath the throne. The instant it touched the floor, the world changed. The throne room shook violently. A deep rumble echoed beneath Blackthorn Keep. The ancient throne began glowing. Golden symbols erupted across the floor, one after another, like stars awakening after centuries of darkness. The walls illuminated. The pillars ignited with silver light. Ancient markings spread through the stone like living fire. Everyone stumbled backward. The castle itself seemed to awaken. Far below the fortress, forgotten chambers responded. Ancient murals glowed. Hidden pathways illuminated. Across Blackthorn Keep, symbols dormant for centuries burst to life. The throne pulsed. The pendant around Ilara's neck blazed with silver light. Brighter, brighter, brighter. Then a wave of power exploded outward. The guards shielded their eyes. Lucien stared in shock. Even he had never witnessed this. The prophecy had begun, and deep within the awakening castle, the truth hidden for centuries was finally preparing to reveal itself. The prophecy had begun. Silver light surged through Blackthorn Keep. The ancient throne pulsed like a living heart. The walls glowed. Columns shimmered. Forgotten symbols awakened across every corridor, tower, and chamber of the castle. The entire fortress trembled beneath a power that had slept for centuries. At the center of it all stood Ilara Ashwin. The pendant around her neck burned with radiant moonlight. The wound on her arm glowed silver. The air itself seemed alive. Then the light exploded outward. A wave of energy swept through the Crimson Throne Hall, across the castle, across every soul present, and suddenly everyone saw. The throne room vanished, the battle vanished, the castle vanished. Humans, vampires, royal guards, Lucien, Ilara, all found themselves standing within a vision, a memory, a truth preserved by the prophecy. Before them stretched a magnificent city unlike anything they had ever imagined. Humans walked beside vampires. Children played in open marketplaces. Merchants traded goods. Families laughed together. No fear. No hatred. No war. Only peace. "The first accord," Lucien whispered. The vision continued. A great hall appeared. Human kings sat beside vampire rulers. At the center stood figures bearing silver eyes and moonlit symbols upon their skin. The Moonborn, the bridge between both worlds, the guardians of balance. the keepers of peace. Then everything changed. Greed entered the vision. Power, ambition. A handful of human nobles gathered in secret chambers. Fear poisoned their minds. The Moonborn threatened their influence. Peace threatened their control. Unity threatened their authority. The conspirators made a choice, and history shattered. The first attack came from human armies. Villages burned. Treaties were broken. Families slaughtered. The Great Blood War began, not through vampire conquest, but through betrayal. The truth struck the royal guards like a hammer. Garrick stared in disbelief. Cedric closed his eyes. Rowan lowered his head. Everything they had been taught was a lie, but the vision wasn't finished. The destruction of the Moonborn followed. One by one, the ancient bloodline was hunted. Men, women, children, entire families vanished. The royal courts declared them dangerous, traitors, abominations. The extermination lasted generations. The vision showed desperate parents hiding their children, running through forests, crossing mountains, living in secrecy. Then came one final image, a young woman holding a newborn baby. Tears filled her eyes. The silver pendant rested against the infant's chest. Alara recognized her immediately. Her mother, Lydia Ashwin. The woman kissed the baby's forehead, then disappeared into the darkness, protecting her child, protecting the final Moonborn. Ilara's heart broke. All her life she had wondered why her mother seemed afraid. Now she understood. Her mother hadn't been hiding from poverty. She had been hiding from an empire. The vision shifted one final time. Everyone turned toward Lucian. The truth about the Vampire King emerged. Not the monster of legends. Not the tyrant from the stories. The Guardian. For 600 years he searched for surviving Moonborn descendants. For 600 years he protected ancient records, preserved forgotten knowledge, prepared for the prophecy. Every sacrifice, every battle, every decision had been made for one purpose: to ensure the last Moonborn survived, to ensure hope survived. The vision faded. Reality returned. The Crimson Throne Hall reappeared. The silver light remained. But now everyone knows the truth. The silence that followed felt endless. Then came the betrayal. No. The voice shattered the stillness. Alaric Vane stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. No. Dorian moved beside him. This is manipulation. The prophecy is showing the truth. Rowan said. No. Alaric snapped. It's showing what it wants us to see. Fear had taken hold. Because accepting the truth meant destroying everything they believed, everything they served, everything they were. Alaric pointed his sword toward Alara. She's the source. The realization chilled the room. Cedric immediately stepped forward. Alaric, don't. But it was too late. If she dies, Dorian said, gripping his weapon, the prophecy ends. The two guards charged. Everything happened at once. Alara froze. The silver blades raced toward her. Cedric shouted. Rowan moved to intervene, but neither would reach her in time. Then Lucian stepped forward, despite his wounds, despite the blood covering his body, despite the holy fire still burning his flesh. The Vampire King threw himself between Alara and the attackers. Steel struck. A blade pierced his side. Another cut across his chest. Lucian staggered but remained standing, protecting her. As he always had. As he always intended to. Lucian. Ilara rushed toward him. The sight shattered something inside her. All the pain, all the fear, all the grief she carried throughout her life. The loss of her mother, the loneliness, the suffering, the centuries of hatred that had consumed both races. Everything erupted at once. The moonborn power awakened fully. Silver light engulfed the throne room, brighter than before, brighter than the moon itself. The symbols across the castle blazed like stars. Alara rose slowly to her feet. The power no longer frightened her. She understood it now. She understood why the moonborn existed. She understood the prophecy. The ancient truth revealed itself. Moonborn blood could do more than heal corruption, more than calm blood hunger. It could free vampires completely. The curse could end. 600 years of darkness, 600 years of suffering, could finally be broken. The future stood before her. One choice away, everyone waited. Humans, vampires, guards, survivors. All eyes turned toward Alara. She could feel the power, feel the anger, feel the temptation to punish those responsible, to seek revenge, to make them suffer. Instead, she remembered her mother. She remembered Lucien. She remembered everything the prophecy had shown her. And she made her choice. No more war. The words echoed through the hall. No more hatred. Silver light spread outward. Gentle, warm, peaceful. The power touched every vampire present. The corruption inside them began to fade. The endless hunger weakened. The curse loosened its grip. For the first time in centuries, hope returned. Tears filled many eyes. Even ancient warriors wept. Because they could feel it. Freedom. At last. One by one, swords lowered. Cedric lowered his blade first, then Rowan, then Garrick. Finally, even the remaining guards let their weapons fall. The battle was over. The war was over. The hatred that had poisoned generations finally began to break. Outside, the storm faded. Moonlight poured through the shattered crimson windows. Snow drifted softly into the ruined throne hall. Lucien slowly rose despite his injuries. Then, before everyone present, the feared vampire king dropped to one knee. Not before a queen. Not before a conqueror, before a poor orphan girl. The last moonborn, the child's destiny had hidden among the forgotten. Around them, humans and vampires stood together in silence, witnessing the end of one age and the beginning of another. At the center of the hall stood Alara Ashwin, the orphan who arrived seeking shelter from a storm, the final heir of an ancient bloodline. The girl whose hidden secret exposed centuries of lies ended a war that had lasted generations and changed the fate of vampires forever. And for the first time in 600 years, dawn finally awaited Blackthorn Keep. The storm above Blackthorn Keep fades. Moonlight pours through shattered crimson windows. Silver snow drifts across the throne room floor. The 6 royal guards stand silent. Their mission was destroyed. Their beliefs shattered. Lucien Voss, feared ruler of Blackthorn Keep and terror of Ebenreach, slowly drops to one knee before the orphan girl. Not as a king, not as a monster, but as a guardian whose 6th-century duty is finally complete. Around them, vampire survivors watch in stunned silence. At the center of the ruined throne hall stands Alara Ashwin, the hungry orphan who arrived seeking shelter. The final moonborn, the girl whose hidden secret ended a war, exposed centuries of lies, and changed the fate of vampires forever.